All right, I'm going to experiment with some halftone stencils here, and I'll show you the ones I've got. I've got an apple, and I've got this famous Bulgarian actor, Stefan Popov, and I've got Shakira somewhere here. I'll show you an example of Shakira. There we go. There's a Shakira. Um, and I think I'm going to start with the apple because the whole point of doing these halftone stencils is getting you to the point where you can deliver a gradient. And apples are round, and they don't have just a clear side. They don't have a. When you separate them into three colors, you don't. With three colors or four colors, you just can't get all the sides of the apple. So I'm going to put up the stencils that I've got here. Okay. And you'll see what we're working with. Basically, this should come out to be like a red apple, and I'm guessing that the one on the left is green. This one next to the right is white. This one should be red, and this one should be like a darker red. So this should be light red, dark red, because this little splotch in the middle is white, because you can see that it's here. And because it's white, we know that that should be the lightest part. So we're going to try this, and we're going to use all the right colors of paint. We're going to do that, and then we're going to paint the halftone version and see how it's different. Let's see here. Okay, so we said this was going to be dark red. Let's go ahead and select a dark red. We might need to do it over here. That looks good. We take that off and we see that we need to clean it up a little bit. Here is the bright red. Here's our green. We're just going to go ahead and give the leaf a nice green coat. Now I know that the rest of this is not green around the edge of the apple, so I'm just going to do the smart thing there, and I'm going to go to a color that's in between that dark red and light red. Actually, it's the color that's between the light red and the lightest red, so it's the one that's almost white. So I'm going to go right up here to the lightest red I can find and just push that in. Okay, now obviously this is I could make this nicer. I could make this cleaner. I could do what red did I have before? Tick 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 tick. That looks like it. And what I could do is I could make a super diffuse spray here. Let's see, that would be this one. And I could dial the pressure way down and I could just go. And it looks better, but it's still basically, the stencil is still basically a dark red, lightest red, green, and that would be if you had 5 tones. But now I want to try it with a halftone stencil, and I'll put those up on the wall so we can see what they look like. Halftone color process can have all kinds of different colors in it, but typically when we talk about halftone or a color halftone, we were talking about CMYK, like the printing style. And I'm going to put them up as soon as I can find them, so we have them to look at. That's going to be the green one. Zook. That's going to be, I think, is going to be the black, is the K. Put that there. That has got to be the magenta, the M. And this has got to be the Y, the yellow. Okay. I think I also have one that I've got here, which is totally the big halftone, which is everything. I'm not going to use that right now. And let's go over here next to this one and just paint the yellow layer first. There we go. Now, ordinarily, when you do halftones, you're not going to have like total areas where it's totally open like this. And I'm working on a way to try to make to close up those super wide open areas, because I don't really like the way it leaves a jagged edge, especially here. But the yellow layer, we're not going to notice it so much. It's when we go to do the magenta layer and the magenta covers up the yellow completely that we're going to notice. I'm going to go ahead and give it a full coat of yellow here, but when we go to put magenta and cyan over, I'm going to just do a less total spray, because this should be subtractive color mixing. Basically, you should have yellow dye that removes every color but yellow, and then you should have blue dye which removes every color but blue, or cyan, and then magenta dye which removes every color but magenta. So it's like each layer takes away the color behind it, rather than what we see here in King Spray Graffiti. If I totally hit this layer with pink over or magenta over the yellow, it's going to totally overwrite the yellow. So I'm going to, you'll see that when we do magenta, we're going to need to have a different approach. I'm going to give this full coverage here. Let's chalk in those registration marks. And I said it's yellow, but you know, I've kind of just chosen I've just chosen yellow here that works. Remove that one, and there we go. There's the yellow layer. Now, like I said, when we paint, the next one is going to be the magenta, and that should be up here. And you can see it's a lot of the apple is magenta because there's a lot of when you want to make red with magenta, you're going to do magenta, and you're going to add black to it. Maybe a little bit of blue too. You can see that the yellow's already there, so yellow's in the mix as well. Get that to line up right. There we go. Okay, so like I said, if I just hit this really hard and go all over it, I'm going to remove all the traces of the yellow. I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do with this magenta layer is I'm going to use lower pressure, but I'm still going to use the chisel. And I'm just going to back up and do it like this. Now, this isn't exactly what would happen with real paint, but I hope you'll forgive me for that, because otherwise it won't show you what I need to show you. There's black, so blue must be around here somewhere. Must be that little leaf. Just the leaf. There we go. See, there's no cyan in the red of the apple at all. It's just a mix of black, yellow, and magenta. Here's my cyan. It's kind of a turquoisey thing. And when I pull this back, you'll notice that the cyan and the yellow are going to combine. Right now there's just cyan there, but as soon as I pull this back, the cyan and the yellow are going to make you see a little bit green here. Okay. The effect will be more noticeable a little bit later, but the further we go away, the more it looks greenish. Okay. All right, so we got the three colors in. Now we're going to do the black, the K. Unlike with the magenta over the yellow, I'm just going to give this a nice, regular, smooth coat. And all the black's going to come in. That's going to give us nice shadows and highlights, I think. And let's see, back up. I see more gradients in this halftone version than I see over here. Like obviously there was no gradient at all until I kind of painted the yellow, the red in around the center. The color is truer on the one on the right, but that is, in the end, I chose those colors. On the one on the left, it could be kind of like a yellow delicious or a golden delicious, or the apple could be like a different kind of apple. Maybe it's not totally red, but I definitely see a green leaf and I see a red apple there. I think there's one other thing I can do to kind of patch this up a little bit. CMYK is always done with the assumption that you're starting with a white layer underneath. And that means that this should have been white, so that when we see this come out, we see it as definitely a bright spot. Also, these are bridges, and just like with every bridge, we could mask those bridges as we go. Obviously, we don't want to go in and just like chick every one of those bridges, because that would defeat the point of having a halftone stencil. It kind of defeats the point of coming in here and doing all this work. But I think I can do just a little bit in here to get rid of that distraction. And then I want to get rid of this distraction if I can. I'm going to use the feather duster on the magenta because it's the yellow that's exposed here. And in the end, this may not help. We'll see. But when I back away from that, yeah, generally I'm a little less distracted by that. The one thing that's remaining that's very distracting to me, or two things that are remaining that are distracting, is one, this white, this place that should be white in the back to show that the apple is super bright, is dark. By luck of where I put the stencil on the wall, I should have put a white layer underneath this. And then the other thing is all these little tiny breaks, tiny bridges in the stencil in the black layer. And I'll have to think about what might be done to help fix that. Maybe bridging everything at a fixed location so that those things distribute themselves, the bridges distribute themselves evenly. Might be a good idea to try that. Okay, so this is what we have with the apple stencil. There were 4 layers of the plain stencil, the traditional stencil. There were 4 layers of this CMYK halftone stencil. For an apple, it has so many gradients and so many curves around it that I would use the halftone stencil for the apple, because I feel like it looks and feels more like an apple than the one on the right. For things that have hard edges and are more object like, I would definitely use a 4-color stencil, and I would use the color of paint that I want. Obviously, there are pluses and minuses for each decision. When you do CMYK stenciling, you only need 4 colors of paint. And when you use your traditional stencil, you really need to find the color that works for the layer that you're trying to use. You do less of this visual additive color mixing. Just notice that when we kind of back up and look at this, if somebody asked you how many colors are in that apple versus how many colors are in that apple, you'd count to 4 on this one, and I don't know, I mean, you would look at it, and if you looked at it really closely, you'd say, oh, that's blue, that's black, that's yellow, that's magenta. But you don't do that. You actually back up and you look at it and you say, you know what? It curves around and it's a little orangey here, it's a little more pinky there, a little more yellowy there, a little more green there. And it really does, your eye really does think that there's more than 4 colors there. Okay, that's it for the apple. I think I learned a little bit about how this works with non-subtractive color mixing, because we're in RGB space here, and when I paint one color over the other, it just totally covers the other color. And there's no notion of transparency like there is with real ink and real paint. So we won't get that feeling here. But I'm going to do another couple of stencils and we'll get more impressions of how things are working with those. All right, that's it for the apple.